I guess my first question is, what does poverty look like in Edmonton right now? Homelessness look like? Like, what are some of the statistics in terms of who's homeless, how many people are at risk or homeless? Are there any sort of firm answers to that right now?
Well, I think the most recent homeless count, I believe it was about 2,300 people who were identified as being homeless. That includes both people who are staying in emergency shelters as well as people who are, living rough. It might catch a few people who are couch surfing as well. So it's down from the peak, which I believe was in 2008. But it's actually up again in the last couple of years. So, and a fair number. Not all of those folks are in McCauley by any stretch, and we do have a homeless problem. It's somewhat concentrated in the inner city, but there are homeless people elsewhere in Edmonton as well.
In a city that's as abundant and prosperous as Edmonton, why is homelessness even a problem?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, some of them have to do with lack of affordability of housing. Because we've been mostly in a fairly booming economy. The price housing is extremely expensive. Like a one bedroom apartment can be $1,200 per month or more. So if you have a low or limited income, affordability is a huge challenge. We've also had a lot of in-migration, and I think even though we have a community plan to end homelessness, lots of people have moved to Edmonton from elsewhere in Alberta, across Canada, around the world, and that has so even though we're getting more people housed, the number of people who are becoming newly homeless is going up just as fast, if not a bit faster.
You're also a resident of McCauley. How has homelessness and housing issues affected you personally as a resident?
Well, I mean, sometimes homelessness can contribute to a certain amount of social disorder. This can be, I think, for the most part, I I try to take a very positive approach. If someone is sort of has a little illegal encampment just down the street or on the berm behind my house, I'll go and try to talk to them. And if they're new to the city, I will sort of maybe try to talk to them about the resources that might be available. Also the emergency shelters that might be available. But I do try to be positive with people, and even if it's one or two kind of illegal encampments, generally they haven't been that problematic. And so, in fact, the way I try to look at it is they're just sort of, by being up in the berm, they're sort of keeping an eye on things in the neighborhood. So if they're not contributing to disorder, I tend to, try to take a positive approach, maybe talk to them, see what they're all about, see if there's any resources in the community that they're not aware of.
What are some of the things that McCauley is doing to deal with its problems in terms of housing and homelessness that you think are really, really positive developments?
Well, I think McCauley, certainly I think, many of us who've lived in the neighborhood have tried to be part of the solution. The Edmonton Inner City Housing Society has been in existence now for, probably 20 years, and it was sort of a community response to homelessness. And many of us, some people more so than I, have been very involved with inner city housing, and it now has several hundred affordable housing units that have been constructed. There are many other examples in the neighborhood of housing development, some tailored to seniors, some tailored to youth. So for the most part, we've tried to be a welcoming community and actually be involved in efforts to develop more affordable housing in order to reduce homelessness. not only in the neighborhood, but throughout the city.
What is the position of the Edmonton Social Planning Council towards the moratorium?
Well, the we as Social Planning Council, we were not in favor of the moratorium on non-market housing. I must say that also reflects my personal position as a neighborhood resident. I think, affordable housing, particularly newly built quality affordable housing, is very much part of the solution and not part of the problem. To the extent that we have crime and disorder problems in the neighborhood, they tend to, and to the extent that they tend to have a housing dimension to them, it tends to be more the low end market housing. That perhaps contributes to the disorder. So I see it to be part of the solution. At the same time, we do recognize that the inner city community leagues, had membership meetings, and including McCauley did initially push for a moratorium to give a breathing space, and that moratorium was recently extended by 1 year. But I think with the idea that we're going to find, better solutions, and certainly if there is a continuation of the moratorium, that that it would not be a blanket moratorium, and there would be exemptions for perhaps seniors housing, family housing, housing co-ops, and so on.
How would you address people's fears towards social housing or affordable housing projects coming into their neighborhoods?
Well, I think people just need to be informed. I would strongly encourage people to contact affordable housing providers in the community, like Edmonton Inner City Housing Society, or Operation Friendship, YMCA, Ambrose Place, and go see for themselves. And as I've said, I think the more newly built affordable housing is really, a necessary community response to reducing homelessness. I do agree that we do need to, that other neighborhoods need to step up to the plate and do more to be part of that solution as well.
What are some of the positive things about having social housing in a community?
Well, I think one of the positive things is that you're actually, if you look at community organizations like the McCauley Community League, the Boyle McCauley News, people who are residents in affordable housing developments become, part of the community, volunteer for community organizations, and make a positive contribution. So I think there's many positives. Management is still important, but for the most part, the social housing, the affordable housing we have is well managed and well maintained, and is an asset to any neighborhood.
Did the social problems in McCauley in any way negatively affect your decision to move there or to stay there for, I believe you've lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years now? Did you ever, get frustrated or with those issues, or?
Well, I think from time to time, we've had some frustrations, but generally they've had little or nothing to do with affordable housing in our community. Certainly not the affordable housing that's run by, established community organizations. We went through a period of time when there was a lot of street prostitution activity. There was, a lot of drug houses, which really were more sort of low-end market housing, and those were challenging, especially when we had a drug house directly across the street from us. So you sometimes, have your moments of doubt, particularly when our kids were growing up. They're now adults and out on their own, but certainly during that period of time, there were some years there that were quite challenging, which is one of the reasons we got involved with trying to set up more positive solutions, and trying to be part of the solution to some of the challenges that our neighborhood was facing.
What are some of the things that other neighborhoods can learn from McCauley's example?
Well, I think basically that affordable housing, well built and well maintained, is an asset to any neighborhood, and folks who live there can make a positive contribution to your neighborhood. And I just think there are so many myths, about crime and property values, and that's really what they are, is myths. I think it's also, I think, beneficial for there to be a mix of incomes in a neighborhood, a mix of different housing types, and in that regard, affordable housing needs to be part of that mix to make a healthy and inclusive neighborhood.
So why then does housing need to be a citywide responsibility?
Well, I think, we don't, I don't think we simply want to give people who need affordable housing the same kind of options and opportunities as all other Edmontonians have. Not certainly when I know people with limited incomes who may live in affordable housing. Not everyone wants to live in the inner city for one reason or another, perhaps because of where their kids go to school or where they have connections with family and friends. And I think it's important to give people with more limited incomes the same opportunity to live, anywhere in the city as other people who may, have higher incomes already have.
What does a caring community mean to you?
Well, I think a caring community is a community where people, respect diversity and want to have an inclusive community and want to live with others and sort of build bridges and make a stronger community together through joint efforts, through community organizations.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that I haven't already touched upon?
Can't really know.
No? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.